All right, what's up, demons? It's the end of April, which means one thing. Our friend Barney is here with us. We made it through our book of the month, The Measure by Nikki Erlick. Cue the props. Bring it in. Got mine from the New York City Public Library. Got to get it back. I think today it was due back, so I got to hustle it back tomorrow. But a great read. A great read for the month of April. Barney joining us. Barney, how you doing?
I'm good, Brad. Good. I'm glad to be back with the demons.
Love having you. April was a grind for me, I will say that. My busiest work month of the year. I know I made a video, not complaining, but just letting people know, how it goes. I think with as we do our book of the month, trying to hold myself accountable, trying to hold everybody else accountable who's joining along with us. And sometimes the road gets a little tougher than we think, but we just got to power through. How'd getting through the book this month go for you?
I was in a similar position, but I love the book. I powered through it in a couple of really long sessions. But ironically, I was in Las Vegas for your biggest event of the year, and I did not go. But I didn't get to read for about 10 days, right in the middle of the month.
Yep.
But it was worth it. That's the highlight. It was all worth it.
Perfect. Yeah, that was a bit of the same setup for me. I feel like I powered through the beginning of the book in a quick kind of time frame before the month got too crazy for me, and then had about same week 10-day period where it was down, but it kind of broke up the book for me in a nice way of like the whole setup, the premise, and then kind of the payoff at the end. I feel like worked out well. So for those that don't know, Barney's joining us, fellow St. John's alumni of mine. We overlapped at St. John's for a couple years together, and now Barney has gone on to bigger and greater things. But we always remember our St. John's roots. Barney, one of the hardest working guys I know, one of the most loyal Red Storm fans I know. We've seen some of the darkest days. We've seen now some of the brightest days. How would you say that the St. John's experience built your character, Barney?
It's the best of times. It was the worst of times. As you know, we had some great laughs and drinks commiserating after the loss to Duke this year. I think that
Yep.
sort of summarized the whole thing.
Yep.
Lots of hopes and dreams, and
Yep.
similar to the measure though. And we're gonna talk like it's all about the people. So not only you and A's, but just the whole St. John's family. That's what it's all about. It's about the people.
We do have a good group of people. I know we're not the only ones, but for A's and I, when we got married, we found Love in a Hopeless Place by Rihanna was our song we walked out to. I feel like a lot of people at St. John's commiserate with that because, yeah, sometimes it was a little tough. But the people we met there, some of our longest friendships, obviously, Aisley, who I've married, still friends with you, and at least a dozen to even more others that we keep in close touch with and talk St. John's hoops. We talk all sorts of other things. But one thing I don't think we ever talked about before was books. I'd say this is probably our first conversation about books before. I'd say probably right, unless I'm missing something.
No, this is our first conversation about books, but I do have one St. John sidebar for you, Brad, which is, did you get the phone call asking for money for today about 6:30 p.m.?
I didn't. I think I might have had a call around 8 o'clock that was none. There was like an NA that I don't know, but I did not answer. So maybe it was St. John's. I don't know.
There you go. They asked me for money just this afternoon. I kept that money so I can purchase some more books.
There you go. Maybe our NIL situation is that dire that they needed to reach out to you and I. We're starting to scrape the bottom of the barrel as the portal season winds down. So I know we talked about this before. I wanted to touch on. I think you tackled this book as an ebook. I think you're an avowed ebook guy. So ebooks versus physical books. What's your stump speech for ebooks?
So I prefer a paperback book is actually the preferred method for me. But I think the format that works for you is the format that enables you to actually get through it and read it. So for me, I spend a lot of time commuting, working at the NBA out in Jersey. So the digital book gives me the opportunity to just, I can get through a couple pages on the bus. I can read, sort of anywhere I have my Kindle. So I do probably 50% of my reading ebook, 50% of my reading in a physical book. But the measure, I was full throttle ebook.
Love it. Love it. I agree with you. Whatever way you can get it done. I've had people ask me ebooks. I've said people have asked, "Hey, I want to join this month, but I'm going to do an audiobook." I said, "Hey, whatever works for you. Whatever gets you to the finish line and gets you to enjoy a story, gets you to enjoy a new world and some new characters, I think is all a plus." I'm a physical copy guy. Try to take advantage of the library because I got a whole stack of books I buy every time I go visit a bookstore that I still got to read too. So if it's a new one that comes across, I try to take advantage of the New York Library. So I like to feel the weight in my hands. I like to see the finish line. That's part of it for me. I like to I'll be reading and I'll flip through okay, how try to do the math in my head. All right, I got 50 more pages to get to 300. So if I do that, that's about another hour or so of reading. And I know, so I'm trying to hit certain goals. But
Well, I told you my issue with that, Brad, which was
yeah,
downloading a little bit of a shady version that I didn't actually know where the finish
right.
line was. And so I was shocked. I was absolutely floored at the finish line of the measure because I
Which
thought I
is
had 1,200 more pages in a 300-page book. So
you had no idea. And hey, however you get your hands on it, I'm not telling anybody the process or the means to which you did. As someone who has been vocal as a anti Amazon buyer, hey, and as I say, buy them however you can. Not imposing that mandate on anybody else, but for me, I try to avoid. So if you kept some money to yourself and kept it out of anybody else's pocket, hey, good for you. So
there you go, resourceful.
Just pay it forward, buy one book from a local bookstore sometime soon, and it'll all work itself out in the whole wash. So
that's one of the interesting pieces. I know, Brad, we're going to talk a little bit about. I have a ton of hard copy books. Every single one of the hard copy books that I have is currently a nonfiction book, which didn't play into this book club. The demons. Demons are all about fiction. So that was one of the challenges I ran into. But I keep reading my nonfiction on the side.
Same, and I've made a choice, and I don't know if I've tackled this specifically. This could be a good breakout. For Printed Demons Book Club, I've been focused on fiction. I myself read some nonfiction. I'm actually reading a nonfiction book right now that I finished the measure, and I kind of been 2-to-1 for every 2 fiction books I'm reading. Maybe there's a nonfiction book I'm working in. But for Printed Demons Book Club, I specifically wanted to do fiction because I think that one, as part of the reason for getting this book club together is men don't read enough, and especially fiction. And I think fiction, which is a great example of this story, is forces us to think about different things that we don't normally think about, forces us to empathize with other people and think about other people's situations, make us use our imagination and step into a different world and work that side of our brain that doesn't probably get enough love as we spend more time watching Netflix or scrolling on our phones, where I think fiction taps into that. And I think a big part of that is, for starting this book club is getting rid of the stigma that guys can't read fiction, guys can't read anything they really want to. There's this idea that, if guys read, they got to read about World War II or some biography about some president. Those are the books we're allowed to read. But hey, if you're into sci-fi, if you're into romance, if you're into whatever, that's cool. Read whatever you're into. So I ask you, Barney, that's kind of the overarching goal. Is there a certain stigma as you join us here today that you look to break down as you work in your everyday life, live your everyday life, or even just reading this month and choosing this book?
Yeah, I think the main stigma for me is that I think both through reading this book and from sort of the way I live it, you don't have to follow a traditional path. That's the stigma that I feel like, for me specifically, I'm a couple years into a relationship. Megan, shout out, gotta make sure she gets in there. And I think the stigma, it sort of comes back to a traditional path. You and A's, you guys are married. You got Cal, you got Zeus, you got the whole whole gang there. And from the book, and we'll definitely get into it a little bit more, the piece that I think actually is like super important. It actually, it's not about the path you take, but it's rather, it's about the legacy. It's about the impact that you have, and sort of like the value that you bring to the people that are around you. And that's how Megan and I live. And I think actually the measure helped me to understand that in a couple different ways.
Agree. And I think you're 100% spot on there. I think you've shown it in the way you've done it, and I know, knowing you and the way you go about things is, there's sometimes an easier road, or sometimes an easier way to do things, or just, I don't know. I still think, as you can see, by starting this book club and doing other things that I do, and have bounced around of certain interests and career paths and all that stuff, of like, I always would say to myself, like, I started out in college as a finance major, and sometimes I envied the people who knew exactly what they wanted to do, and were like, I'm going to go and I'm going to work here, or I'm going to be a doctor and I'm going to do exactly that thing. And I'm like, I'm enjoying what I do. I love what I do. I don't necessarily ever thought I'd be doing what I do. I don't know if I would be doing what I'm doing now in the next 10 years. Who knows? Maybe I'll find something else I want to do. But for right now, I'm enjoying the ride. And as you said, as we get into this book, I think that's a big part of the message of what it is. So I think we've teased it enough. Let's dive into the plot here and tee up the measure. This book by Nikki Erlick, shout out to her. I know she is a newer author, went to Harvard, but more importantly, got her grad degree from Columbia right here in New York, as we've got our own New York ties, and my wife Aisley has her Columbia ties, so got to shout out the Lions. So this book, I think, is unique and interesting in that it's built around a very kind of mind-pushing premise. The premise is that everyone in the world is delivered a box on their front door on the same day, out of seemingly nowhere, no explanation, dropped on their front porch, their doorstep, wherever it is, and inside the box is a string. The length of the string symbolizes how long that person's life is going to be. There was a lot of mystery around it at first, but eventually they were able to decipher that a shorter string means your lifespan will be shorter, longer string means you're going to live a long life. Eventually, over the course of the book, there's some more science into how that eventually does it. And then people who turn 22, that's when you receive your box. That's what they figured out next, is that when you turn 22, you get your box. And then until then, you don't know. So a very interesting premise. So the three big questions, which we'll get into later, but everybody can think about as we do this plot summary, and I think you teased as we selected this book, is 1, would you open the box? 2, if you had a long string, how would that change the way you lived your life? And 3, if you had a short string, how would that change the way you lived your life? And kind of the 4th, would it change it at all? So anything I'm missing there in terms of the boxes, the strings, anything else? I mean, I think it was a really interesting way to set this whole thing up.
No, I think you captured perfectly.
Cool. And I think one of the ones I thought originally was like theories on how the boxes got there. So for me, we'll get into the conversation of probably faith and all that as we go through this story, but I approached it a little more practical at first. I said, all right, first guess for me was like, this is Amazon. Amazon just dropped boxes off on everybody's doorstep. Bezos is behind this. He's got something cooking.
They were running the world, yeah.
So if anybody could pull off logistics, it would be Amazon. So I think maybe some sponsorship opportunities for the boxes there. My second one was there's just some sort of AI plot, as in their way to take over the world somehow. AI algorithmed exactly how long our lives would be. It was some sort of life insurance algorithm or whatever that figured it out. That was my second guess. And then my third guess, which I think I settled on the most, was just Mr. Beast. This was a Mr. Beast prank on the entire world, and it was all being filmed for a Mr. Beast special that was on Amazon. So what do you think out of those three scenarios? Anyone that you think makes the most sense?
So, not gonna lie, I also had the Amazon theory. Um, I like the Mr. Beast plot twist. That's the one I'm sticking with now.
Yeah. Can you see like the thumbnail on YouTube, like Mr. Beast just holding up the box, and he's like, "I sent 1 million boxes around the world."
Well, he didn't he build the wells in Africa? So this is sort
Right.
of like an extension on that. So
Yeah.
next
Yeah.
logical, step for him is delivering these boxes. All seven continents, every person in the world. Absolutely.
The challenge is there, Mr. Beast. Can you do it? Go for it. Um, so yeah, so I think the next most important thing for me, because I think I was kind of doing this, especially after I took the break, was like keeping track of all the characters and who's who, what's what. So I'm going to run those down really quick. Our main characters are Nina, who is a long string magazine editor, who is dating Mora, who has a short string, and is part of a short string support group. As part of that support group are a bunch of people, but our biggest characters along with her are Ben, who is an architect and part of the short string support group as well. Hank, who's a doctor who leaves his job after a hospital shooting in the city and is also part of the support group. Amy, who's Nina's younger sister, who is a teacher, who has just chosen to not open her box, so we don't know the status of her string throughout the story. We're also introduced to Jack, who's a long stringer military cadet whose uncle Anthony Rollins is running for president. Javier is Jack's close friend, and he's also in the army and has a short string. And as we mentioned, Anthony Rollins, he's running for president. Jack's family is like a dynasty Kennedy type family who Anthony Rollins is married into, and he's a long stringer running against Wesley Johnson in a presidential primary. Wesley Johnson, a short stringer. So those I think are helpful to bounce around and kind of remember all the characters. So the support group is really the center of the story. Ben starts writing anonymous letters with the teacher in the classroom that they share back and forth. So he just kind of is like trying to deal with his short string and make sense of it. So he starts writing these letters anonymously, leaving them in the classroom for somebody to find. And then it turns out the teacher that shares the classroom starts responding to him. We learn about like the intricacies of the boxes, that they can't be destroyed, conspiracy theories that they're bugged. And then I like that the author Nikki Erlick tosses in a few of these things throughout, that like there's little like just kind of like little Easter eggs where it's like short strings prompts the Spice Girls to reunite, but also that Grey's Anatomy gets canceled because there's too many short stringers that they decide to leave. So I want to know, what do you think the author knew about the Spice Girls that we don't? Is there something there?
I don't know, but the piece I really did like about, and you mentioned it earlier, like both of us being from here in the New York area, like I really like the fact that it's a fiction book, but there is a lot of reality, specifically as it relates to how Nikki really brought New York to life, but also some of the it's a fictional world, but some of like the geopolitical and societal norms. So there was a reference at one point, can't remember which character it was, but to the fact that in New York you're not going to like walk around talking to people, but specifically with the flowers being laid down at the spot for Hank, and I thought that was like fantastic. So
Yeah.
I don't know about the Spice Girls, but I love Nikki's homage to a little bit of reality in this fictional space.
And New York City, yeah, is a good point. I enjoyed. I'm a sucker as a New Yorker, as maybe you are too, just for New York stories, whether it be books or movies, and like spotting places in a show that I've been to before, or reading this book and they're going through Central Park and other parts of the city where I'm like, oh, I know exactly where they are right now. It just gives you a sense of comfort, right, as you're reading something like this. So as we go through, we start to see a growing issue with the short stringers. One is this hospital shooting that Hank's a part of that forces him to leave the hospital. He said he was kind of planning on leaving already, but the shooting was kind of a breaking point. It was carried out by a short stringer who couldn't get help at the hospital. Um, and it kind of like made me think of. I asked the question, not even specifically because of this, but when I thought about the short stringers, I was like, why wouldn't there just be a purge? Like, why wouldn't like short stringers just rise up and be like, I've had enough of this as some of this like stuff started to happen as they start to get marginalized. Um, and I kind of thought like, I don't know. I thought there'd be a little more factionalism early on, or like starting to lash out a little bit. I mean, what did you think about that in terms of like how they set that up of some of the short stringers, and like you think how that reaction would have went in reality versus this book, or did you think she did a pretty good spot on of like how people would react of receiving this short stringer news?
So I thought that she did, in terms of how the measure portrays society, like a better society than what we may have seen in reality, just based on how
I
the
tend to
world goes
agree.
right now.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so, but specific, like directly to your question, I actually thought she did a great job of capturing um, some of the factionalism, in terms of like you saw the uh, different, you know, assembly of individuals, whether it was the support groups, and the fact that there was the short stringers, the like medium short stringers, the
yeah,
long stringers. Like I actually
yeah,
thought that people did sort of tend to group together. It sort of comes back though to, for the my rationale for why I don't think that there is an uprising, and why I don't think an uprising necessarily would happen, would be, it does come back to like the individuals. And I thought she did a great job. Well, it was a little bit confusing with the number of characters that were introduced to us, and
yeah,
it took a little bit of time for some of the payoffs to come through in terms of why we were introduced to some of the characters. I do think like each one of the characters had some level of value from like a moral perspective, with exception probably to Anthony. Like he's probably the only one that he's a presidential candidate, so maybe that
yeah,
uh, once again brings us back to what we're seeing in reality.
yeah.
But that's what I thought about, just specifically as it relates to how this could have compared to how it would play out in real life.
Yeah, no, and I agree. I think like it's something I thought of during this book of the factionalism, like you said, of these groups, and then splintering like even shorter, and it like makes me think about too of how our groups become like faction within our lives, and like these smaller and smaller groups that we have, and obviously these groups that we make. I like to think we do a pretty good job of like breaking out of those, and we have different friends from different backgrounds and whole different things, but at the end of it you're also too like, hey, we already are a little like fractured to a degree, and like how can we break out of that? And you see these characters do it throughout the book of like, how do we break some of this down now that it's been established? So as you allude to as well, Anthony Rollins throughout the book, not a great dude. As one of the consequences of this hospital shooting, we see him push for the STAR initiative, which keeps short stringers at a certain government military positions based on them just not having a long enough lifespan, and forcing people to look at their strings in public service who didn't want to. Now, while I don't disagree, like this is a really interesting like moral dilemma that you would have in society of like, hey, would we actually want somebody who has a short string like being in charge of the military? And like, how does that affect the way you view the world? And like, oh, I'm gonna die in 2 years, so I don't care if I cause mass destruction over here. But at the end of the day, I do think it just gets down to more character questions. It shouldn't be a short string, long string kind of debate. But I don't know. How do you think like it's obviously like she almost paints it as like Rollins and his like idea structure is so evil, and I definitely agree that the way he goes about things is not very like I don't think a way that it should have been done. I also think there's a version of him that could have been much more evil. Like I
Yes.
think that I think we'd see maybe in real life if this kind of situation did. But like, what do you think about some of those like moral dilemmas of like short string, long string, and how that fits within how society operates?
So I started to think about when thinking about this type of question, like what would I have done with a long string, and where I sort of netted out, and I think the approach from the character, I completely agree. Anthony Rollins could have been way more evil and dangerous,
Yeah.
uh, but I think you saw it in the instance where there was the assassination attempt,
Yep.
and I think the a lot of the long stringers that we were introduced to, not true for each one of them, but for a couple of them, there was almost like a sense of complacency that they got, and they lost a sense of urgency. And we weren't introduced to all of, obviously, like everyone in the world, we weren't introduced to all the characters, but it was alluded to multiple times throughout the book, the fact that, long stringers started to take more risks, but the risks weren't really calculated risks. They were risks that were like, oh, I'm going to go bungee jumping because I know that I'm not going to die because I have a long string.
Yeah.
Those types of risks. And so that's where I actually saw this play out a little bit more in terms of like, I was like, okay, like if they have long strings, they're not really motivated. They lose
Yeah.
that motivating factor. That's sort of how I interpreted that.
Yeah. It's an interesting point, like the whole long string theory. I just think she did a pretty good job with it, where it's like, oh, if you were to, they're like, oh, you people would do crazy things, but they wouldn't die, but you could still break your legs or paralyze yourself or do like really terrible damage to yourself. The one I don't think was quite answered is like if you had a long string and just like jumped off the roof of your building, like what would happen?
Yeah, what's going on here?
I think there needed to be some sort of maybe like fail safe of like, you did something to cancel your string out or whatever. But
I agree, but the only piece, the specific instance that I was like, wow, okay, was actually Javier or Javi over in the
yeah,
leaving the helicopter, and like
yeah,
I was like, oh, like here's a real example of like,
yeah,
because he knew the length of his string and because no one else knew that, like he was like,
yeah,
this is my time.
yeah,
And I was glad actually that we got that closure in terms of the specific paragraph, like him laying there hearing the chopper leave.
yeah,
So that was sort of, I don't disagree with your point, but I thought that I was glad at least we got like one instance of like, wow, here's like a real instance of this playing out.
yeah. And maybe that's a bit of my own fault as I read. Like I do play a lot of devil's advocate, and especially with a premise like this, I'm always like, what if you do this? Or like the other one I think I wrote down in our notes is like, how would life insurance work? Like I think that industry would just be gone because like people wouldn't write you life insurance anymore. Like
So it would, because there's no risk associated.
right.
So like
you
all life insurance is just a risk assessment. Someone taking
right.
it. It's a gamble. It's a bet.
Yeah, you're paying in, and they're assessing that they think you'll pay more throughout your life than you're gonna get back, or just like it'll even out with somebody else, and that's all it'll be.
So I started thinking about that in terms of, and this is like when we started thinking of reality. So like life insurance, that's unfortunately something that we all either have taken care of or you should be taken care of. If you're a demon that's out there without life insurance, you should definitely be taking care of that. But the thing that I started thinking about there is like, and it lightly was addressed in terms of like different government regulation, but like the string length would have to be protected by like HIPAA laws or something like that. Like there's no way that these string lengths could just be like meandering out in like public Google Sheets or whatever. It's way too sensitive information for that type of thing. Like,
Yeah, and so that was a big thing throughout the book where the Star Initiative forced a lot of people to have to look at their strings. People who decided they didn't want to now had to look at them to work in certain jobs. You also had, this cause of the short string movement that's trying to protect a lot of this stuff. So let me speed run through a couple plot points here, but just for some context, Jack and Javier are friends in military training. They propose a deal to trade their strings Javi has a short string, Jack has a long string. Jack's kind of like, I'm not really for the military. I think I want to take a step back. But you could rise much quicker, Javi, if you had my long string. So they agree to swap. You mentioned before, Hank also stops the assassination attempt against Anthony Rollins during a campaign rally in Central Park and dies in the process. I think both of these acts kind of flip some of the short string, long string theory on its head a little bit. One, I was kind of hoping for in the book that Jack and Javi's switch might have unlocked some sort of selflessness where their strings actually switched. I was kind of hoping for that twist at some point where like the selfless act of changing your string actually like somehow converted the string's power to the other. So obviously, as you alluded, it didn't. Javi ends up passing in a helicopter attack later in the book. But I thought that might have been an interesting twist. Didn't come to fruition. But I think Hank's, I think Nikki Erlick did a good job of this, of like conveying that, yes, like people with these long strings have this blessing of the long string, but a lot of that is based on the backs of people with short strings and the sacrifices they make, and how the world works because of that is because like his life was ultimately saved because Hank stepped in front of a bullet that was meant for him. And that's kind of an interesting way to look at like fate and destiny and all that kind of thing, of like there's all these moments in our lives that maybe we could have had a brush with death or been closer to death than we think of. Certain things that happen within the city or happen in the world where you're like, oh, I was in that spot an hour ago, or I drove down the highway 15 minutes after that giant crash that happened. It's like how everything's kind of interconnected. So I don't know about you, but I thought those were two really interesting kind of string theories, as they call them.
I had never thought of the trading of strings, plot twist that they could have went with, and that would have been awesome. That's a great idea. But no, I completely agree with you, and I also love the payoff with Hank being an organ donor.
Yeah.
Once again, just sort of coming full circle into like short string doesn't necessarily mean, that's the end, or that's sort of mortality, the end all be all. And so I actually enjoyed the fact that there was a little bit of a pause. Like I'd almost forgotten about Hank, and then
Yeah.
it was like, no, Hank lives on. I really like that part.
Yeah. And I think too it gets into faith right throughout the book. Anthony Rollins uses his nephew's short string as a campaign ploy, and throughout his campaign you can see how he kind of starts to view himself like almost a godlike figure, that he's unstoppable and like he's destined for this, and like this he was given the long string and that means this is his for the taking. Javi turns to religion as like he's dealing with his short string and how he's trying to make his impact in the military and leave his own legacy. And he has a very memorable scene where he goes to a church and is like praying and trying to come to terms with his short string. And like for him it's like, all right, I have this short string, but I know for me that when I leave this earth, that I'll be with my family again, and I'll be able to spend time with them again. And then there's other people who think of there was this movement towards like Buddhism or Hinduism, when religions that believe in like reincarnation, of like, oh, I might have a short string but I'll be back again. And like so they did make that comment of like some of those like religious experiences seeing like a huge surge. So I'm not a person who lives my day-to-day life with a ton of I would say like organized religion. I'm not
You're not a church-going fella, Brad? Is that what you're telling me?
I'm not a church-going fella. I used to go with my grandmother on Christmas Eve. I went on Easter with some friends. That's about it. I describe myself as more of a humanist, and sometimes one of those people who's like, I'm not sure if I believe in God until maybe something like this happened with, the measure of like, it makes me ask these types of questions. Like if something like this happened, how would I deal with the role of faith in my life? So I think that was a very interesting part of this book.
I'll actually add in one piece. Just it's a common theme, something else that we haven't talked about. Because I put myself in a very similar boat to you, just as it relates to where I see myself. But my mom, my brother, like they're church going fellas, and you know love Catholicism. I did Catholic school. We mentioned St. John's as a common tie. The other common tie that we had, you as a BC Eagle, myself as a Fordham Prep Ram. I had a little bit of a Jesuit uh, upbringing, and actually one of the pieces from a Jesuit perspective that I carry through today is like the you have to ask questions, and that's something that I 100% think is true. And so that's one of the ways that I live my life. It doesn't necessarily tie directly back into the measure, but it does tie back into, you know, choosing your own path, choosing what your legacy is. How are you going to make an impact on different people? And it's just ironic because the book was very forward as it relates to this surge in religion and faith. But I actually think that we see the same thing in in reality in society. Thinking back to if there is a disaster, or if there is some sort of global event that takes place, you start to hear from the various different religious leaders, addressing not only their faith but the or faithful followers, but also the world at large. So while we don't need to go to a church or a synagogue or any other type of thing together, like I do think that there's a parallel on that, just in terms of like how society as a whole sometimes reacts to these type of global phenomenons.
Yeah, and I find myself so over the I've had different sides of it, and like yourself, I've had experience with Catholic education in college and other things. I've had experience with all sides of it. As I mentioned before, like more recently, I've really enjoyed reading Kurt Vonnegut over the past couple of years, and he's somebody who's a humanist, and I read more about that, and that's a bit more of like emphasizes just people's humanity, kind of freedom, and like human well-being rather than like a certain level of like divine intervention, and like more focused on how humans affect the world rather than like dogma and relying on science and reason and all those types of things. That said, one thing that's always stuck with me, and that's why you say like kind of carving your own path, is like I've never been somebody. There's been times where I've had experiences with like going to church, obviously as part of family ritual or whatever. But like the other part of it that always stuck with me, and one thing I learned through my education, like Catholic education, was one conversation we had one time where like this idea of like agape, or the idea of what God is, of like which stuck with me, which I always liked, is like God is love. And I think that really relates to this book of like God isn't a man or a woman. God isn't this like thing that lives over our life, but it's just the ability for humans to love each other and take care of each other. And that's kind of relates to this humanistic approach that I think of like what makes us different than animals, what makes us different than other species, and what makes us special is just our ability to love and take care of each other. So I think that would be an area of faith that I think I would go to in this hypothetical scenario of the measure, is like, how do we use faith to take care of each other? And I think that's always a blocker for me with modern religion, is like too much of it, I feel these days, just takes away from others. We use religion to take stuff away from other people. We use religion to justify not letting people have certain things, being anti this or pro this, like it comes from my religion. Whereas like to me, it's just like, hey, let's just treat each other with love and try to find a common ground of where we're headed with all these issues. So
You mentioned Hobby and the specific passages that related to him going to the church. I thought the other characters, though, and what Nikki Erlick did a really good job of, was also not making this book too religious. And the specific characters, it was Ben and Amy's relationship. Like you never heard anything as it related to religion, or honestly even really in their relationship addressing politics as a whole. Like
yep,
they were sort of agnostic to all of that. And you know Mara and Nina's relationship, while there really was actually no religion and sort of dismissive of religion, with them actually getting married, as a lesbian couple, getting married in City Hall. Once again, homage back to New York City, and the
Yeah.
fact that that's a real thing. I love that, but
Yeah.
also the fact that the two of them, they did address, like, Mara was getting like really involved with politics, and Nina is, working in media, like, directly correlated to that. I think I like that balance. I felt like you could sort of get into and out of the measure, uh, exactly whatever you as an individual wanted to, and it was really thought provoking in terms of being able to flex whether it's okay. I want to think about it from a political lens. I'm going to think about it from a religious lens, or maybe I just want to think about it from like a practical lens. I really enjoyed that sort of freedom, like choose your own adventure type of style as you followed along with the individual characters.
Yeah. No, I think that's something that's really great, and I think there's a good balance of different perspectives, good balance of different ideas that are going on. A few other plot points I wanted to hit. One kind of inflection point is when Mora and Nina go to Italy. They note some of the cultural differences, which were a little heavy-handed, but just like U.S. versus Italy, and the Italians, I thought kind of funny of just like, oh yeah, we don't think about any of this stuff like you guys think about it. Like, yeah, life is life. A bit of a caricature to me of like European lifestyle, which is obviously sometimes very appealing, but I think it was a funny kind of aside in the book there. And Mora, and Nina get engaged despite their difference in strings. They overcome that kind of boundary, decide to get engaged. Ben meets Amy while the two are away, and they're kind of helping check in on their apartment and doing some other things. Amy being Nina's sister, and we find that Ben puts the pieces together that Ben has been corresponding in these anonymous letters with Amy throughout the entire story. And then Amy kind of has this crisis of, how can I marry someone with a short string? Starts talking to Nina about how she could do the same. They have a big falling out that kind of leads us into the end of the book, right? And a lot of the resolve that we're getting to. So I think you mentioned before, one night I noted that a woman visits Hank where he died in Central Park to leave some flowers. We learned that he had gifted her his lungs as an organ donation, and kind of that idea of, like we mentioned before, living on and outliving your string and having an impact on the world beyond while you're gone, and this debate about short stringers and how they can still make the most out of their lives and make an impact despite some of these limitations. On a note about that, Jack also grabs the mic at a campaign rally and delivers a powerful message of for short stringers, and kind of rebuking his uncle and trying to lead this kind of movement that's been building around the book about the short stringers kind of coming back. And then I'll kind of take us through the end here. Nina and Maura get married, which you talked about. Ben and Amy reconnect at the wedding, and Amy decides to finally open herself up to Ben. And we have this theme that she hears a guy riding the bike, what will be, will be. How did you think about that, of the idea of relationships between short and long stringers? Is that something you could have dealt with? And I guess we can get to some of the questions before of, like, in a bit of, would you even open your box? How would you deal with some of these scenarios? But what did you think about the relationship aspect between short and long strings?
So I thought that the best perspective, which I did tease on Instagram a couple days ago with just a screenshot of one of the pages, was the Gertrude letter.
Yep.
And the payoff there for the rest of the demons. If you don't recall, or if you haven't gotten to that part yet and you're thinking about reading here, is the fact that it's a World War II love letter type of thing, and the soldier dies before they can get married, and Gertrude goes on to live life into her 80s, and it's sort of that regret in terms of, okay, well, maybe you wouldn't have had this long loving relationship for the rest of your lives, but you could have a couple years, or maybe it's a couple days, or maybe it's even just a couple minutes with that special someone that it comes back to the value. It's like the value of that time, and that's the piece. Before getting into those some of those hard hitting questions, that's like most important in my opinion, which is something that's not explicitly stated in
Yep.
this book, but something that the most recent nonfiction book that I read, it's a Mark Cuban. What is the?
Cubes.
Yeah, it's like a collection of it's a how to win at the sport of business, and it's a collection of his old blog posts basically that he published, and the moral of that, which is like it's ironic, it's ironic because the moral that he gets to is basically that time is more valuable than money. And I think that holds true through the measure in terms of it's not necessarily the length of time that's important, but rather it's the impact that you're having during that time or the value that you're bringing during that time. And you see that with like Javi versus Jack, and um, even I'll let you give the full payoff as it relates to the end of the book, but like you see that through all these individual characters. It's about how much are they putting into that time, whether it's in that relationship or just their impact on their life on Earth, in totality.
Yep. Yeah. That's as we get to the end here, really starts to come through. They skip ahead a few years as we get to the conclusion of a lot of these characters. We talked about before, Javi dies in a mission to save civilians. He's holding the prayer card he received from Jack, and Jack comes up with a plan. Javi had written a letter that he had left under his bed for when he had passed, that he knew at some point he would pass and people would be wondering what had happened, and Jack comes up with this plan to kind of let Javi's legacy live on, try to deal with some of like the short string stigma that had come about, and help him be the hero that he really wanted to be. I don't know about you, I felt throughout the book I was almost waiting for it. Like I felt like they were best friends. I almost felt like Javi and Jack might
A
have been in like
little.
some sort of relationship. I felt
Yep.
like at times.
There's no
Just
mention of girlfriend for either of them there. So,
yeah,
yep.
and I think some things unsaid there, but just the way they talked about each other, were emotional with each other. And hey, uh, like we said, breaking down stigmas, we can be friends in any way we want to be friends. But I had my another one. I was waiting for the twist of like, oh, these two really love each other as more than just friends, and it didn't end up being the case in the book. But maybe it was, and was just never really explicitly said.
I captured that one too when they were able to reconnect and actually rekindle their friendship
Yep.
towards the end in terms of that going to grab a couple beers at the bar. The piece there that was it was interesting that they like slipped out the back door of the party. They like went off on their own and like avoided all of their friends, and I was like, you know, me and Brad have grabbed a couple drinks before, but we never like ditched the party. But I agree. It's not about the stigma, but no, I definitely picked up on that.
Yeah. We then Mora passes away, and Nina writes a book about the positive influence of the strings on people's lives as their story seems to come to a conclusion. And then we have maybe Amy and Ben, who become sort of the moral center of the story. They do get married. They do have kids. Their kids, I think, were 11 and 9, around that age as the story gets to this point. And then Ben, knowing he has a short string, develops, I think it was cancer. He starts to go to treatment and started to realize that the end is coming near for him and his string is almost done. And then probably the hardest hitting twist of the book, we learn that Ben and Amy die in a car accident on their way home from one of those appointments, leaving their 2 kids behind. Amy had not ever looked at her string, and that was part of her dilemma of finding love with Ben, but I think telling the message of, again, we don't know how long we have as we approach life. Like you said, we may have 10 years with somebody, 10 days with somebody, 50 years with somebody. we'd all love the long term of it, but how do we enjoy that time that we have? And it did seem like Amy and Ben really did enjoy that time, even though there was an unfortunate tragedy that ended their story. That I don't think they let that define it. Nina ends up taking the two kids. That's where we leave the story. And I think one of the final parts of this book that we're kind of left with is that this discussion of now, by the end, a few years later, 10 years later, however kind of long this is, more than half of people no longer open their boxes and look anymore. So as we have talked about, I guess the $1 million question, would you have opened your box, Barney, or would you have not have?
I'm not opening my box. I don't need to open my box to tell me anything about myself, and that's actually that's the honest answer. It's like it sort of comes down to, even if I hadn't read this book, like what exactly am I learning about myself? The dilemma that I came back to when I started to think about this is there's the saying like knowledge is power, and I think the scenarios that this book went through, knowledge is power when it comes to certain pieces, but is knowledge freedom? Is knowledge stability? Is knowledge, what exactly does that do for you?
Yep.
And so that's why I wouldn't open the box. I don't really, it doesn't really do anything for me. There's no perceived value that I think I would get from knowing bad news. Just like to bring this back to a St. John's parallel, I went to DC with tickets for Sunday for, St. John's versus UConn, and I was on that Amtrak on Saturday afternoon, a couple $100 out of my pocket, dumping those tickets to a non-Duke, non-UConn fan. So,
yeah. We don't know what life's going to throw at us, right? I do think myself, I think I'm somebody who would not look as well. I don't think that I would, like you said, it's not something, I like kind of the mystery, and I like the flow of life, and I like to go with things. Sometimes maybe to my own detriment, but I think at the same time there is value in just like knowing, not knowing and being able to adjust in real time. I think that the hardest part for me, and I tease her, my wife Aisley, she is somebody who cannot deal with not knowing.
She would open the box immediately. I was going to actually ask you that.
Immediately.
In terms of, have you guys had that conversation? Because did she read the measure? Because like
she hasn't read the book, so I'll talk to her about it and do a follow up with some feedback. But I know I tease her because like we'll watch like a thriller movie, and I'll catch her like Googling the end of it, and I'm like, how are you Googling the end of the movie? Like we're watching it right now. Or like she would have read the measure, or like I'll catch her reading a book, and then all of a sudden she's reading like the last 5 pages of the book, and I'm like, wait, what are you doing? She's like, I need to know what happened at the end, and then I'll go back and read the rest of it.
Well, we would also all know what length Aisley's string is too, because she would not keep it to herself. So that's actually that's why I wanted to ask you in terms of what you would do in that situation, because I was wondering how your situation would change, because I would guess that Megan would not open her box, but that she would make me or her mom or her sister open her box to look at it. And like she wouldn't want to be in the room, but she'd be like, I need to know, but like I need to know if it's.
But then she'd be able to tell in everybody's faces what the reaction
Well, no,
was, right?
she wouldn't want to see our reaction, and then she'd basically expect us to lie to her.
Yeah,
that's what I think. She'd be like this has to be good, and that's why I said I don't know if it'd be me, her mom, or her sister, but someone would have to look in that box, and they'd be responsible for giving her good news. So
and that's kind of what we get to, right? Is like even in that scenario, we're all kind of lying to ourselves in regular life, because we all kind of we all say to ourselves, I'm going to live to, I don't know. You hear people say, I don't want to live too old, but I don't want to die too young. I want to live to like 83. That's my perfect number or whatever. And it's like, so we just lie to ourselves and like, that's where I see myself, and I'm going to get to that, but we just don't know. We don't know what's going to happen.
And you may ask, like, which I guess I can sort of address these questions. Like, I don't know if there is an age that I would say this is the age I want to live to. I want to live basically until like I'm no longer having a good time, no longer
Yeah.
impacting other people. Like, and it's, I want to make sure I'm giving Megan the best, you know, time that she can have. I want to make sure that you and Aisley, Cal, everyone else, like, I want my friends, I want my family, I want society, I want my industry, broadcasting, sports, the NBA, others, like, that's what I have a good time with. So, like, when I stop enjoying all of that, or like if to go back into the measure in terms of one of those crazy scenarios, if I fell off, which I just moved and now I live on the 64th floor of a building, if I fell out my window, I do not think I would want a long string in any, like, no, thank you. Don't need that.
64th floor. What a brag. You're in the penthouse right off Park Ave now, Barney, aren't you?
It's nosebleeds occur up here. It's not Park Ave. That's I can't afford Manhattan. That's why I'm out here in the boondocks in Queens. But
Queens is the great best borough, the world's borough.
the
Uh,
Russell Borough.
Great. That I think answers most of our deep questions there. The only other one I had, which I just wanted to note, I always thought as they talked about this, and obviously it was a crazy part of our life. We knew each other kind of around this point. But I was like, man, that window of right before you were about to hit your 22nd birthday would have, it's like already a crazy part of your life. But just imagine of being like, I'm about to find out how long I'm going to live in 6 months. Like, I'm going to go crazy.
So I actually was recently talking to some students from St. John's,
Yeah.
and I was recounting when I was in their shoes, and ironically, it came back to my birthday's in December. My birthday it's December 18th, which is right
Yep.
around the end of the semester. And I actually finished my undergraduate the day before I turned 21. And so my 21st birthday, I was at an internship in the city, the NBC Sports, and then I was on campus, I think, like, working a basketball game or something like that.
Yeah.
So I found it, like, super ironic because I thought the same exact thing. I was like, wait a second. At 22, I was a St. John's athletic communications grad assistant living with Gilbert in the Gothel's house with,
Yep.
there's an inside joke here that most demons won't understand, but with Judith. And,
Yep.
that would have been gasoline on the fire if I had to get a freaking box that told me long or short string. Absolutely insane.
My box would have been showing up to my apartment at Bell Boulevard.
Ooh. So you would have been opening it at Safari. Whether you wanted to open it or not, you would have
we could have
been.
had a whole party. So yeah, I don't. That's a good point too. At 22, I don't know if I would have equipped to deal with the weight of opening that box.
I mean, you would have been like hitting Martha's, grabbing some cookies and then, like, accidentally opening your box while fist pumping it to DJ Vinny Bruno. Shout out.
Ladies' night at Safari Beach Club. All right, awesome. Well, that was great. A great run through the book. All right, we're gonna close it out here, Barney. We got a few fun things. First, here's the big surprise for you. I told you I had a surprise in store.
D-Jenks.
Oh, what's up?
D-Jenks, did you read the book?
No, I didn't get to it.
Yeah, I knew it. Do you know how to read?
Occasionally. I have my moments.
Wait, Brad, can I surprise you with something?
Yeah.
I don't know if, and you can cut this out if this is inappropriate for the podcast, but
Hey, we don't have many standards.
Well, you need to at least cut this and send it to Billy. Dylan, have you told Brad some of the major issues that have occurred in your life recently? And I'm talking specifically about your car incident.
Oh, I totaled a car. Yeah.
Does Julie Jerkovich know about this?
Yeah, in that context, yeah, I totaled a car, and then in the other one, I bumped the taillight into something in the garage and broke that. They don't really stock 2017 Spark taillights anywhere, so waiting for one of those to come in. I mean,
for some backstory that people don't know, Dylan now lives in Alaska. So creates its own set of issues.
It's not as cold anymore,
driving, all those things.
Snow's mostly melted. So that's good.
Great. And then the other side of that is the backstory. Dylan, when we were at St. John's together, one day to our friend Billy, there was an urgent email that came through that let him know in all caps that Dylan should not drive any university vehicles.
I definitely had driven something at that point.
Yeah.
Probably a
Under
van.
no circumstances should Dylan Jenkins drive any university vehicles.
I remember coming in and Billy going, "Hey, did you drive here? Did you crash something on the way in today? What happened?" Like, I was completely perplexed. Apparently, when they ran a background check, they saw that I'd had my license suspended for speeding tickets when I was 16. So, yeah.
Did you steal a university van and were living out of it somewhere? What happened?
Well, that's how you make TV on the internet. You have to live out of the van.
That's it. That's basically living out of the van, making TV on the internet. So Jenks, I wanted you to join for the end of this here. I know you mentioned you didn't read the book, but again, we love you. Next time, just ask us. We'll read the book to you. We'll just get on.
Now, that's not a bad idea.
Yeah, we can read the book to you, do some dramatic readings. But I'll switch hats here. I'll switch off my book hat. Put my St. John's hat
Let's
on.
go.
I think Aisley was wearing this hat. It's a little tight. We'll just hold on. We'll set it up here. We'll loosen up the St. John's hat as we go. But
I'm representing another
obviously
erstwhile institution, the Pac-12 networks. Definitely still exists.
Hey, coming soon. Pac-12
God.
We're back, right?
And that'd be some zombie Pac-12 networks.
Back from the dead. So, all right, one of the things I wanted to do, and I think, Dylan, you'll be great for this, I'm going to do a blind ranking of famous St. John's alumni.
God.
How many do I have? I've got 5.
Okay.
1 through 5. So I'm going to let you and Barney blind rank these. So don't let either of your decisions influence the other, but you got to rank 1 through 5. We will start with 1 being your favorite St. John's alumni, 5 being your lowest. And so number 1, we'll start with the great Impractical Joker star, Sal Vulcano, St. John's alum. Practical Joker is obviously one of our favorites during March Madness season.
I mean,
during True TV
nothing says
time.
True TV like Impractical Jokers.
Impractical Jokers in the 10-12 tip time on Thursday night.
You know what?
Tournament.
My dilemma here. And so wait, we're not supposed to influence each other.
I mean,
right?
I think I know where I'm going. So
I know where I'm going.
I'm going 4.
I'm also at 4.
I don't know what lurks around the corner. That's
okay. That's why I'm at 4, because I know that St. John's has some very. But you know what? I have nothing against Sal. I actually really like Impractical Jokers.
Yeah.
The reason that Sal lands at 4 for me is pretty simple. It's because of the Long Island stigma. I don't need that. And I'm sure that there's going to be another one that can occupy my 5 spot.
I think Impractical Jokers is lacking in giant NBA players, and that's why I'm excited for the new Anthony Davis show. I've seen a lot of good promo for that.
Great, I love it. Good, good promo for the new Anthony Davis show, which is titled.
I assume it's the Anthony Davis, Impractical Jokers show. I saw a dozen ads for it during the tournament, so
Tall Impractical Jokers. Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's go to our next choice here. You're both slotting Sal into the 4 spot. Bat and cleanup. One of our favorites of the school, the patron saint, Chris Mullen.
Okay.
Great basketball player.
You said patron saint. I got worried.
I got mine.
Let's hear where you're going, because I think I know where I'm going.
Now I'm going to influence you. I'm going 2.
I'll go 1. I'm.
Ooh, okay.
He was a little. I mean, most all of Chris Mullin St. John's was before either of our time, but a legend. Obviously, if it wasn't, the building wasn't named after Carnesecca, it'd probably be named after him. We can just pretend that 2015 to 2018, whatever it was, didn't happen. That's fine. The pitfalls of hiring your greatest player as your head coach. This is one where I'm not as worried about what lurks around the corner, because I'm hard pressed to think of who I would slot ahead of him. I mean, I could think of probably someone I would, but it'd be a stretch. So
Chris Mullin's got the keys to every gym in the Bronx, Brooklyn, Queens,
Yep.
Manhattan, Staten Island, and that's why I'm slotting him in number 2.
All right. Our next choice, also St. John's alum. Not sure if he really loves the school that much. The sports pope, Mike Francesa.
ooh.
5.
Immediate 5.
You gotta hold that slot 5 for something, and that's the.
Yeah,
That's a
I think
5.
I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go 3, partly to be contrarian, partly because, God, I still am holding the 5 spot open.
Cecilia Chang's not on.
I'm very concerned Cecilia Chang is working on this list. As someone who's followed sports media for a long time, before I got to New York, I had no clue who Mike Francesa was. And then I was like, hold on, this is what I don't understand why everyone's so fascinated by this man. But I wasn't around for the days with the Mad Dog, so
Andy Pettit is a starting pitcher. All right, so we've got a couple spots open left. Barney's still got his number 1 spot open. Jenks, you've got your 2 and your 5 spot open, right?
Yeah.
Your bottom
Yep.
and
Yep.
7.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Somewhat in the same vein, a man we all love, Stump the Schwab, Howie Schwab, St. John's alum.
I have to go 2. I don't even know how many times I watched whatever I did. I'm like, this is the dream. This is turning a career of sports knowledge into a career. This is that. Yeah.
Yeah. Now the only thing I'm hesitating on. I am actually very, very confident in my rankings here. Yeah, you know what? I'm putting Schwab at 1 for a lot of the same reasons Dylan just mentioned, but in addition, he was always just such a nice guy. Every time I got to interact with him, and that's not even. I think I would put him over Chris Mullin, just because of the impact he had on me personally.
Yep.
So definitely not as good a basketball player as Mr. Mullin, but.
All right, Brad. What have we cornered ourselves into here?
All right, we got one more. There was a lot of ways I could have went with this. There's a lot of people I considered.
You still have
for the
time,
list.
apparently.
Cecilia Chang, Meta World Peace,
Yep.
Keegan Bradley.
Meta World Peace in the mix for every job that's open. I heard he wanted to coach Syracuse.
I mean, the world is his oyster.
God.
But I went with actually, I could have went in a lot of different directions, but I went with a fictional St. John's alum for the last spot. Ray Barone of Everybody Loves Raymond, a famous sports journalist, is a St. John's alum.
You know what? I think I'm happy with my rankings. I don't think I'd actually change anything.
So where does Ray slot? Everybody Loves Raymond, but
I'm at 3.
I think I've got him at 5 then. Yeah.
Oh.
Wow.
So everybody doesn't love Raymond.
Apparently not, no.
So my best Mike Francesa story here is I one time took Francesa's picture with the one and only Sid Faruqi at a Villanova versus Hofstra basketball game that reopened the Nassau Coliseum.
Wow.
And that experience with Mike Francesa potentially could have actually moved him up on my list because it was actually a decent experience.
Okay.
But his Long Island factor just sinks him down.
Barney
Like,
is just very much we can't. You've dealt with these
Barney's-
people for too long. You don't need to deal with them anymore.
Exactly.
Barney's ongoing war with Long Island.
Exactly.
All right, so there you have it. Run them down real quick. Dylan, your list went Chris Mullen #1, Schwab 2,
Schwab 2,
Francesa 3,
3,
Sal 4,
and
everybody doesn't love
Freeman at 5. Yep.
And I'm Howie,
Barney, yeah.
Mullen, Ray, Sal, Francesa. No regrets, no trades, no takebacks. That's it.
Like I said, I was very this was a wide open pot that could have gone anywhere. I was like,
Anybody
know any of these people? Probably better that we don't know any of these people.
Yeah, the one that I wanted on this list that I was holding out a little bit of hope. So I had two or three that I would have been completely fine putting at the one ahead of Mullen. I actually hadn't thought of Schwab, but I had Bob Shepard. I would have loved Bob Shepard at one.
List. Yep.
Another one that I was thinking could have played into this would have been like a John Franco sighting. You know, John Franco.
Thought about Franco. He's everywhere wearing the St. John's hat. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
I would have put D'Angelo Harrison #1. I'm just going to say that. I'm still in the bag. I think that never got a fair shake in the pros, but it's a little late now for that.
Well, he's still in the pros. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Still getting a paycheck to play ball.
That's a good point.
The only one I thought too, I really kind of wanted to throw in there, but I don't know if enough people would know him. Obviously, probably know his son better. Was the great Mario Cuomo, former governor of New York, St. John's
Law. Yep.
He's got a bridge named after him.
God.
That he does.
And he's had a couple of kids that have gone on to do things.
Yeah. Some stuff.
Oh, man.
All right, so there you go. Some blind ranking of some famous St. John's alumni. Tossed on the red hat for it, not the bad red hat. St. John's taking the red hat back. Although some of our fans wear both red hats, but it's okay. It's the Johnnies. We love them. All right, our last segment. I thought this would be fun to have you two for Jenks as well. I wanted to ask a few for Barney here. I don't know if you have asked any questions, but I like to ask our guests some questions about themselves. For me, I want to ask a native New Yorker. So, Barney, somebody who's been born and raised in New York, a couple questions for you as somebody who grew up in New York. One, to me, I've always maintained New York teenagers are the scariest people on the planet. I just think their life experiences, how they interact with people, terrifying, frightening. How scary were you as a New York City teenager?
I was not a very scary New York City teenager. I never subway surfed. One of the things in the neighborhood growing up was jumping off of the Basketball Diaries, the Columbia Sea Rock, which is where I grew up. I did not do that. Everyone else did that. I did not. So I was probably the least intimidating New York City teenager that you could have possibly found. Which I'm proud to say.
That's good.
That tracks for what I would think, Barney.
Where would you pit New York City teenagers against the Long Island teenagers who we've all experienced when they need to come into the city and find any place that'll take people who are under 21?
I think it's a whole different type of scary.
Yeah, I've ridden the Long Island Railroad with some of these folks. It's a scary scene. I'll give you that. I'll share a story for me of one of the seminal moments of scary New York teenagers. Now raising a kid in New York, I'm like, I love raising a young kid in New York, but it scares me about the teenage aspect. One time, Aisley and I were in Central Park, hanging out. Nice, beautiful day, early summer, late spring. Grabbed a nice bottle of wine, having some snacks, just sitting on a blanket, talking, catching up. enjoying a beautiful New York City day. All of a sudden, we see a bunch of kids, some all like teenagers, high school age, having their own drinks, smoking pot, hanging out in the park, whatever. Do you have some fun? I'm not your parent. All of a sudden, there's like 100 teenagers in the park. One half walk over from the right side here, the other half walk over from the left. Just like a fight breaks out, and a bunch of them start fighting. I look around, I look at Aisley, I look at this other couple who was like our age. We didn't know, but they were sitting near us. I'm like, I feel like we're the adults here. Should we do something? And Aisley's like, no, we do not do anything. We sit right here and we don't do anything. All of a sudden, one of those like little like park cop cars rolled onto the grass, and they all just scattered in every direction. And I was like, wow, what a wild time here in Central Park.
The right behavior there is exactly what Ace advised, which is you do absolutely nothing. You don't react. You don't walk away. You just mind your own business.
It's an amazing. Barney's right. It's something about New York that I mean, as someone who barely had spent any time there before I was dropped in my freshman year, you're living your life, and you let those folks live their life. And if it really intersects, then maybe you do something. But
the only exception that I have to that rule would be if you enter into the smelly car on the subway, you get the hell out.
Smelly car's tough.
Yeah, no smelly car for me.
Is that the worst part of New York City, the smelly car? That'll ruin a summer day really quick. It's happened to Aisley. It's happened to everybody once. I know she was scarred by it once. It's like, oh, there's a completely empty subway train. That's nice. I'll get a nice seat.
The second you see that, you got to be like, okay, so there's another car over that I might need to go to if this is a problem.
Yeah.
It might be. If it's not the smelly car, it's got to be other things that occur on the subway or hot garbage. Like it's one of those. It's one of those.
Garbage strike in the summer.
No, you know what it is actually? All of that's secondary. It's the Port Authority. That is the worst part.
The worst place on earth. Yeah. Tough place to be. All right, another question for our native New Yorker. I know the answer to, but I think everybody will find it fascinating and want to get some insight on it. Do you have a driver's license?
I do not have a driver's license, and that is a strategic decision. As a younger individual, I did not need a car because I had friends with vehicles. Mm-hmm. And so I took advantage of that. Just as I've taken advantage of your ability to have a driver's license and car. And the benefits that I reap from this are I don't pay car insurance. I don't pay for parking.
Just nice.
I don't pay for a lease on a car or car payments. I've never had to rent a car. Which pays off both my professional as well as my personal life.
Yep.
Because when I travel for work, I cannot rent a car.
Uber everywhere.
It's going to be an Uber for me.
It's a very interesting approach. Obviously, you haven't really had to do it living in New York City, which is good. And you're practical. And the only thing I can claim here is, as far as I know, I'm the only one in this group that's allowed to drive St. John's University vehicles.
Technically.
It still happened, but technically.
Yeah. My final question I had, and I'll let Dylan if you have any. When did you start taking the bus or subway on your own in New York City?
Regularly, it would have been high school because I walked to school from like 2nd to 8th grade. But I definitely would have taken the bus by myself in like 6th, 7th, 8th grade, just not like adventures. Like, it's called a day trip. Oh, I'm going to the museum.
You're a good kid. We established. Yeah.
But no, prior to high school, I was primarily I'm going to walk there.
Yep.
That's absolutely. I mean, that's one of the things I loved being in New York was just the transit accessibility is great, but also just walking everywhere. I mean, it's there ain't many other.
You can't do that in Alaska, Dylan.
I've moved to definitely the least walkable and least transit accessible place I've ever lived. It might be the least walkable, least transit accessible place in the world. I don't know. You need a car here. There
Pretty
is
close.
no option.
Like, yeah, we talk about certain areas, obviously, like around here, the suburbs, not as walkable. Other areas aren't as walkable because of, like, physical issues. You're not as walkable because you will literally die.
And
Correct?
you need a car to drive to wherever. I mean,
Yeah.
nothing's there. They don't put housing next to the grocery store. It's
Hey, Brad, I need to flip this on its head for a second and ask Dylan an Alaska-related question.
That's where I wanted to go next, too. Yeah, go for it.
So, Dylan, could you please explain to the audience, because once again, I know the answer to this, but could you please explain to the audience a little bit about what a snow machine is and how that factors into regular life in Alaska?
have not gotten on one this winter, but up here, snowmobiles are called snow machines. And there are definitely places where, the state's humongous. There are places where they are necessary to get from point A to point B. There are people who need them to get from where they are to the nearest tiny airport to use that to get to an airport that actually serves anyone. You'll see people riding them along the side of the road sometimes, but snowmobiles are apparently snow machines.
So my fast follow, Dylan, if St. John's were in Alaska, would you be allowed to drive a St. John's snow machine or no?
I think yes.
I think I'd figure out a way.
Yeah. How do, as somebody who lives in Alaska now, how do laws work in Alaska? I under the impression that you just kind of make your own laws and govern yourselves. Obviously, your wife is a lawyer, so there may not be as much truth to that.
There are far too many people. Well, there are people up here enforcing them. There are people up here breaking them.
Laws of nature.
There's that too. We haven't had any bears yet. Where Anchorage has a gigantic bear population, but I have had moose come through the backyard and in our neighborhood. So
that's cool.
Yeah. It's not quite as Wild West as you would think, but it's pretty libertarian. Let's go with that.
I like to imagine that it's like Arrested Development, and that it's all about maritime law.
Or Always Sunny Bird Law.
Or bird law, that's another, yes, exactly.
What's been your favorite part about Alaska so far, Dylan?
The mountains. I'm looking out the window right now at a mountain that's just there. I mean, they're everywhere. They're humongous. They're imposing. I grew up in Seattle, and there's one much bigger mountain that you see all the time. But this is like you're surrounded everywhere you go. And they're impressive. They're pretty. They're covered in snow. For a town of a few 100,000 that Anchorage is, the food scene is a lot better than you would think for a place that small. So that's been
okay. That's
been good. It's far from perfect, but it's a lot better than you would have thought. I mean,
have you done more sushi, Barney? I think I got Dylan into sushi.
Oh man!
We went to Delaware,
this is a real sticking point in this house. My wife loves sushi, and it was like, it's not really my thing. I'm not interested. And then Brad Naisley took me, and I was like, it was pretty good. When she heard that, she almost blew a gasket. Haven't been back. No, I don't think I've done sushi since we've done it a couple times at Bethany Beach.
Dylan, do you still eat Chef Boyardee directly out of a can?
I have not had any Chef Boyardee out of a can in probably since college, no.
Okay, good.
But I did see
one of
the NASCAR drivers was driving the Chef Boyardee car this weekend, and that looked pretty sick.
Amazing. Any other questions? Alaska, New York related? Anybody?
Barney, worst slice of pizza you've had?
Ooh, worst slice of pizza. Oh.
Unfortunately, the Sbarro's just went out of business outside MSU.
No.
I don't think that's the worst. Yeah.
Oh, man.
The worst slice of pizza I've ever had probably would be one of those 99-cent
dollar slice,
fresh, but not the dollar slice, not like Two Bros dollar slice.
Yeah.
Specifically, like the 99-cent fresh pizza just south of Times Square. Like I think it's on like West 40th Street. We were talking straight cardboard, no
Yeah.
sauce. I don't even
A
know what
little bit
kind
of
of
cheese.
cheese.
Yeah.
Yeah, gross. That's the worst.
Tough. Not a good endorsement for that spot. Stay away.
No, bad. Stay away.
All right, Dylan. Thanks for joining us.
Absolutely, it's
I'm going
been
to
a
sign off
pleasure.
with Barney here on the podcast. You're incredible. We love you. Hope everything's going great in Alaska. Thanks for joining.
Thanks.
See you, Dylan.
See you, bud. All right. What'd you think? What'd you think of the DJing surprise?
I love the DJing surprise. I ironically called him yesterday just to check in.
Yeah,
So I love it.
it's good. Good to check in with our guy Jenks. Always good for a Jenks appearance. And what a way to take it home. All right, as we end the podcast, my go-to final question: what will stick with you the most about this book going forward?
Yeah, I think the piece that's going to stick with me the most is definitely the. And I mentioned it a couple times throughout, but just the fact that it's not about how much time you have, but it's about what you're doing with that time. The value of friendship and relationships, and ironically, that like I just talked to Dylan yesterday, spoke to Rebecca's wife, just to check in, and I think that's one of those. It's important whether it's a phone call, whether it's a text, whether it's a comment on an Instagram post, or grabbing a couple beers, like just spending that time, having those experiences. That's what it's all about. So that I think that's going to be the key theme from the measure that lives on. Now that I've completed it.
Yeah, amazing. I completely agree with you. I think as we saw with the heart of this book, between the support group and the friendships and the relationships, it's take care of everybody around you. Be good to your people. Your people will be good to you. We got to look out for each other, no matter if it's boxes with strings showing up on our doorstep, the craziness of everyday life in this world and stuff that gets thrown at us. We got to take care of each other. Barney, I appreciate you taking care of me, taking care of the group, reading the book this month, picking the measure, leading us through it. And I appreciate you for joining, Barney.
It's all about the demons. I'm
It's all
looking
about
forward
the
to
demons,
May.
baby. Demons and the Johnnies. All right, Barney, thank you very much for joining. And thanks everybody for reading.